Story 1, Valheim. The models are somewhat rough, but with lighting effects and ambience, they have created a strikingly beautiful game. Story 2. I could give a long list of definitive games that prove this point. Original Super Mario Bros., Stardew Valley, and Minecraft are the best choices. However, I am going to choose Fallout 1 and 2. Because they could not rely on graphics, they had to depend on role-playing game mechanics and storytelling. Story 3. Surprised no one has mentioned Pokemon. The graphics in almost every game are poor, but they are all very enjoyable to play. A special nod to Pokemon Snap. Story 4. Oblivion, for its time, it was great. But nowadays, I still find this game to be one of the better open-world role-playing games to play, with actually interesting quests. Story 5. Anything by Infocom. Watch the documentary Get Lamp. These games were loved by blind players who found video games in which they were not limited for the first time. Story 6. Final Fantasy VII has the worst graphics in the series in retrospect, but still captivated the minds of many impressionable teenagers. Story 7. Tetris is essentially stacking blocks, and it has been popular for 40 years, with new versions continuously emerging. Story 8. American McGee's Alice was quite buggy and somewhat repetitive, but the storyline was fantastic. The 11th Hour, The Seventh Guest, and Myst were also notable. Story 9. Wii Sports Resort is an amazing game that, when you boot it up today, makes you realize how strange it looks. Story 10. Wind Waker is special to me. My friends boycotted it because it didn't look like Halo, but it remains one of my fondest memories of The Legend of Zelda. Story 11. Final Fantasy VII resembles melted Lego models being pushed around a painting, but it remains a pinnacle of the role-playing genre. Story 12. Super Mario Bros. Has aged poorly in terms of graphics when compared to other Nintendo Entertainment System games, especially within the series. However, it remains just as enjoyable to play now as it was 40 years ago when it was first released. Story 13. Barony is a fantastic roguelike with many complex systems. I've seen it get dismissed and mistakenly compared to Minecraft graphically for some reason. Story 14. Outer Wilds is a detective journey with significant highs and lows, presented as an experience that only video games can provide. Story 15. Atari 2600 Adventure. Your character was a box, and the rest wasn't much more detailed, but it was fairly big and challenging for a role-playing game in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Story 16. I have many stories to share about Dwarf Fortress from when it was only in ASCII. It was one of the most immersive experiences I have had. Story 17. 9 out of 10 DOS games. Colonization. XCOM. Elite. I challenge anyone to complete XCOM. Terror from the Deep on superhuman difficulty without using save scumming. Story 18. Hands down, RuneScape, specifically old-school RuneScape, has been running since 2013 and has more players than ever. Approximately 78% of players voted in favor of bringing back a saved copy of the game from around 2006 to play instead of the version that existed at that time, which resembled a World of Warcraft lookalike. Old-school RuneScape still looks and feels exactly like it did in 2006, except there is a third-party client available, officially trusted by the games company, Jagex, that makes it more visually appealing while still keeping the old-school charm. As of this writing, there are 146,000 players online. Story 19. For professional wrestling fans, the Fire Pro series stands out. The games have maintained a 2D style throughout their run, with only 2 to 3 games opting for a 3D style. Despite this choice, they remain some of the best wrestling games ever, featuring many elements that players still rave about. Only recently have mainstream games started to take inspiration from them. Story 20. Dwarf Fortress, cute little sprites at best, ASCII at worst, but gameplay as deep as the mines of Moria. Story 21. FTL, Faster Than Light. To the Moon, Dwarf Fortress, Before Your Eyes, Stronghold, Fallout 1 and 2, Heroes of Might and Magic 3. Story 22. Star Wars. Knights of the Old Republic is an incredible and timeless game. I loved the graphics back then, and I still love them now. Story 23. Faster Than Light is the best roguelike game I've ever played, and it features simple pixel art. Pokemon Red and Blue are objectively unappealing, yet they are arguably the most popular games ever played. Story 24. BattleBit, at least for the few months it was popular, is a game similar to Battlefield with graphics reminiscent of Minecraft. Story 25. Faster Than Light. The graphics are very simple, but the art style looks super clean. Under the hood, there is a lot of depth that makes the game infinitely replayable. Story 26. Cruelty Squad is visually offensive but an amazing example of postmodern art. The graphics are so poor that they become good again. Story 27. Katamari Damacy had poor graphics, but it was incredibly fun to play. On the other hand, Assassin's Creed 1 featured beautiful graphics, but completing it was a chore. Story 28. Fallout New Vegas. 15 years later, it's still my favorite single-player game, and it didn't look good when it was released. I just finished another playthrough a couple of weeks ago. Story 29. World of Warcraft and League of Legends are both competitors to games with better graphics and more complex gameplay, such as EverQuest 2 for World of Warcraft and Dota 2 for League of Legends. However, both of these games attracted more players due to their lower graphics requirements, allowing them to be played on more affordable computers, as well as their easier learning curves, making them accessible to a larger audience. Story 30. Super Paper Mario. Oh wait, that's more gameplay. Metroid Prime. Why are people saying Minecraft? Story 31. Space Empires 3 was essentially a detailed 4X space strategy game. You could encounter a new alien race, disable their ship, board it, steal their technology, reverse engineer it, and then incorporate it into your own ship designs, showcasing the game's depth. Story 32. Stacklands on Steam. A simple card game where you grow a farm and resist the urge to own 100 chickens. Be prepared for an all-nighter. Story 33. Graphics or art direction. Golden Idol, Baba Is You, Pizza Tower, and Minecraft all have poor graphics but look great. Bad art direction? I don't know. There are not many truly ugly games. Early Factorio often looked rough. Story 34. Foxhole. The game has seen a slight decline in its player base, but it still offers enjoyable moments of large-scale combat. Additionally, we can expect aircraft to be introduced soon. Story 35. Wakfu 13 years, currently undergoing a user interface change. Dofus, 20 years, originally a Flash game, it has now transitioned to Unity. Story 36. Dishonored, the game has one of the best aesthetics I have ever seen, despite the graphics appearing poor. I have genuinely come to love its style. Story 37. Rogues are practically a genre on their own. I want to highlight Tales of Majayal as one of the best games I have ever played. It may look unappealing but is quite good for its genre, as it does have graphics. There are numerous classes and many things to unlock. The turn-based combat is really well thought out with plenty of build variety. The game has been around for decades and continues to receive significant combat updates. I have been playing for years and still have so much left to experience and explore. Story 38. I'm super picky about graphics. One little drop in frame rate or graphics and the game is ruined. I just started playing Fallout 3, New Vegas, and Skyrim. They are so immersive. You forget the graphics are outdated. Story 39. Minecraft and Ultra Kill are distinct games. Minecraft offers a unique experience, while Ultra Kill features an additional retro option that mimics the appearance of a PlayStation 2 game, enhancing its visual style beyond the standard look. Story 40. StarCraft, Brood War, Age of Empires 2, Worms Armageddon, and I don't know if it's nostalgia, but I still like Soul Calibur, Dreamcast, the best. Story 41. Mount and Blade, Warband. The graphics are outdated, but the game, although a sandbox, is great. I have never had as many playthroughs in the native and modded versions as I have in this one. And yes, chess. Story 42. Many classics like Command and Conquer, StarCraft, Brood War, Heroes of Might and Magic 3, and Age of Empires 2 still have active communities despite being over 20 years old. Story 43. The Stanley Parable has fairly simplistic graphics, but that is intentional. The game explores the absurdity of video game development, with the narrator discussing various deep philosophical issues, prompting thoughtful reflection. It is quite clever. Story 44. People forget how rough the original Resident Evil looked, even for its time, but it was still scary as hell. Story 45. Perhaps it is not a popular opinion anymore, but old Blizzard games featured clever graphics that felt timeless and beautiful, and they ran smoothly on average PCs. This includes everything they created in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Story 46. I prefer lower fidelity graphics combined with visionary art direction and engaging animation every time. The progression of graphic technology started diminishing around the 6th generation. These days, when I encounter high-fidelity graphics, it only indicates a higher price, excessive hardware requirements, and frequent glitches. No thanks. Story 47. Traditional roguelikes such as Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, Cogmind, and Dungeons of Dreadmore are some of my favorites. Story 48. Dwarf Fortress, Dominions, Caves of Cud, Tales of Maj'Eyal, Shadows of the Forbidden Gods, Gothic Arx Vitalis. Story 49. When it was released, Dwarf Fortress did not have graphics, yet it offered more engaging gameplay than nearly any other game I have ever played. It will forever be the embodiment of substance over style. Story 50. Crysis and the Call of Duty series consistently proved that pursuing graphical fidelity is a never-ending race. These are not bad games, especially Crysis, but each one was supposedly the peak of graphics, and then a few years later became outdated. Story 51. Every game is going to age and have bad graphics in a few years. If it is still playable, then that game and every other game that survived will be valued. Story 52. RimWorld has poor graphics, but it features incredibly addictive gameplay and mechanics, such as the black market organ and limb farms you can create. Story 53. I love what can be created with it. Working calculators and computers. My favorite thing is always making underground layers. Story 54. Games predominantly rely on graphics. One can easily identify grass as grass and water as water, regardless of whether it is 4K or 8-bit. Those represent good graphics. It would be more accurate to refer to them as hyperrealistic graphics. Story 55. How are you defining graphics? People often provide examples of games that feature excellent and consistent visual design in various styles, although not necessarily super realistic ones. Story 56. World of Warcraft Classic is the definitive answer. Minecraft and Roblox are likely even better answers. Story 57. Chrono Trigger and any of the Final Fantasy games are enjoyable. It is hard to choose the older ones as the graphics were good back then. Story 58. I have never felt so old on the internet. I played for tens to hundreds of hours on the ZX Spectrum and Commodore 64. I played Rebel Star on the ZX Spectrum so much that I mastered it. It was a phenomenal game in terms of playability, despite its incredibly basic graphics. It didn't matter. You were completely immersed. When my kids were small and playing Minecraft, I commented on the blocky old-school graphics. They asked what games I loved as a kid. I found a video of Bruce Lee on the Commodore 64, one of my favorite games. They were literally doubled over laughing, gasping. Is this a joke? Is this real? They laughed so genuinely, while I was traumatized. Story 59. Most games released by From Software have a great art style, but they rarely have the best graphics. Most Metroidvanias also share this quality. They look beautiful, but that is due to the art style and not their graphical power. Story 60. Apparently, World of Warcraft is a game my wife plays as if it's brand new, despite being 20 years old. I think the graphics look poor, but the gameplay must be exceptional because she has been playing it since before we got married in 2013. Story 61. The entire Nintendo Switch has no power, but the games are still fun and it has been successful in terms of sales. Story 62. Minecraft, Terraria, Celeste, Stardew Valley, Undertale, Vampire Survivors, and many more games released in the past 4 decades are still enjoyable to play. I was born 11 years after Galaga, but it remains fun to play. The elements that make games enjoyable for us are the satisfying gameplay loops and the feeling of making progress. Story 63, Star Citizen. You also need to deliver the full game. Simply showcasing the graphics of ships is not enough to generate revenue. Story 64, Ultima Online. I couldn't care less about the graphics in that game. I spent years playing Ultima Online, Age of Shadows on free servers. Some amazing memories were definitely made there, despite other beautiful games being around at the time like Crysis. Story 65. Final Fantasy VII has graphical elements that have aged poorly, yet it remains exceptional and is arguably the best in the series. Many people will advocate for Final Fantasy VI as another strong contender. Story 66. Infocom text-based adventures are a series of interactive fiction games known for their rich storytelling and innovative gameplay. These games allow players to explore virtual worlds through text commands, solving puzzles and uncovering narratives. Story 67. There are many that could be on this list, but for me, these three stand out. World of Warcraft 20 years and counting. Chrono Trigger, great graphics for its time, and they did an amazing job on the story. Minecraft, self-explanatory. Story 68. Zelda, Breath of the Wild. Not that it is ugly, but it achieves great art direction with significantly less graphic power than other large sandbox games. Story 69. Literally every single one. If a game is good, then good graphics will make it great. But if the game is bad, good graphics will only make a more detailed bad experience. Story 70. Newer Call of Duty games are some of the most regurgitated AAA games. They feature amazing graphics but suffer from terrible and unimaginative gameplay, alongside numerous bugs and issues that are ignored in favor of more paid cosmetics. Story 71. Phasmophobia features basic visuals paired with somewhat clunky animations and zombie models from the Unreal Engine store. It is still a fantastic game that is incredibly fun and has genuinely scared me several times. Story 72. Back in the 1990s, there were many shareware games available for free download, usually created by individual amateur developers. The graphics were basic even for that era, but many games were enjoyable. Scorched Earth and Sky Roads were my favorites. Story 73. Oblivion is fun and chaotic but appears quite dated today. Somehow, it still looks stunning and beautiful at times, especially when you are zipping around the green mountains of Cyrodiil at twilight, and then the music starts. Story 74. Final Fantasy I. Downwell. Streets of Rage 2. Blades of Steel NES. OSU. Tetris. Myst. Half-Life. PlayStation 1007 games. Some of these might be a stretch. Story 75. To this day, my favorite gaming experience is the early 1990s strategy game Master of Magic. It is similar to Civilization, but with magic and wizards. Despite its terrible 8-bit graphics, it offers infinite replayability. Story 76. The Mega Man series is a good example, especially if you include both Classic and X. The graphics upgrades do not significantly affect the weapons or level structure, and some of the later games, such as X7 or Classic 8, were not well received. You can also look at Mega Man-inspired games like Rosenkreuzlet, Mega Serval, or Rako-chan and find many that still hold their own regardless of budget or graphical quality. Story 77. Old Pokemon games are enjoyable for me, partly for nostalgia, but I cannot deny that I like them for what they are. Minecraft is another game I appreciate. I would not have fathomed that a blocky game could be so much fun if we hadn't had something similar in the first place. Story 78. I just started playing Dragon Age Origins again for the first time in about 15 years. The graphics are better than some, but they aren't great compared to today's standards. After that, I will move on to Neverwinter Nights. Enhanced to check out the new expansion. Playing these old games is really enjoyable on an older PC. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.